and go into perdition. Now let's recap briefly so we understand. This is a very crucial verse. This is verse 8. The beast that thou sawest, we have identified the first 6 beasts as Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, the Medes and Persians, Greece, and Rome. These are the first 6 beasts of this image. There are 2 to come. Now let's read this verse very, very carefully, because we have to place ourselves in Patmos in the year 90 AD, when John was given this vision. We have to put ourselves in his place in order to understand this verse. The beast that thou sawest was telling us that the beast, that this new beast that you're going to see, it was at one time. It did exist at one time. And is not, meaning it does not exist in the time that John was alive. And shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. So we know that this beast that he is about to see, after the 7 heads, will ascend out of the bottomless pit, has already existed in a time before John, and will be reborn. Let's continue reading. And it will go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. Again, we're told that this beast was, that it existed in a previous incarnation. It's one of the previous 7 beasts that we're talking about here. And that it is not currently in existence in the time of John, so it can't be the Roman Empire, because the Roman Empire is in existence in the time of John, and yet is, meaning that it still exists in the background. It's lurking in the background, ready to be reborn. Now, let's continue, verse 9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And it's not true, as so many interpreters tell you, that we're talking about the 7 hills of Rome, because we've already ruled Rome out, and we've already been told that these mountains are kings. They're kingdoms. They're not literal mountains. Verse 10. Let me go back first, sorry. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth, and there are 7 kings. We're told again that these are kings, not literal hills. 5 are fallen, 1 is. So the 5 that are fallen we have already identified. And the one that is Rome. We have a double witness to this truth. And the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. So we have not yet identified the 7th beast, but John is being told that when that beast comes, he will only exist for a short period of time. And there's simply no doubt that the 7th beast is Napoleon. The reason why this is Napoleon is because Napoleon himself overthrew the 6th beast, the Papal States, militarily overthrew the papacy, put the Pope in prison. Now, with the Holy Roman Empire being founded roughly 800 AD, and we are told that this kingdom lasted approximately 1,000 years. It was the policy of the papacy, of the popes in the Vatican, to crown the kings of the Holy Roman Empire. The first king so crowned was Charlemagne. And this began a tradition which lasted approximately 1,000 years, from 800 AD until 1800 AD. When Napoleon came along, the Pope offered to crown him as the new emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. In fact, at Notre Dame, at the Cathedral of Notre Dame, the ceremony was scheduled to take place. The Pope, the then ruling Pope, was there, and Napoleon was there. And as this Pope grabbed the crown, ready to place it upon Napoleon's head, Napoleon grabbed the crown from the Pope's hands and crowned himself. When Napoleon crowned himself, that symbolized the end of the Holy Roman Empire, because Napoleon was the new emperor, unassociated with. In fact, he had overthrown the papacy, which had crowned all of the previous emperors before him. Therefore, Napoleon is the seventh beast. And, as the prophecy says, he must continue a short space. He overthrew the papal states around the year 1798, and his empire lasted until 1815. So it's only a short period of about 17 years. Of course, he was a military leader during the French Revolution and established his kingship in France and then expanded it. He virtually took over all of Europe and had a treaty with the Russians, so that he controlled all of Europe except for Britain. So he was indeed the seventh beast, and he endured for a very short space of time, for approximately only 17 years. So now we have identified all seven heads of this beast kingdom. Now, let's continue. These have one mind. Let me back up to verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. And as I explained to you, these were the 10 kingdoms which formed the Holy Roman Empire. Remember, this vision was given to John in 90 A.D., so it had not yet come to pass. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb. Remember, the Holy Roman Empire under the Vatican instituted the Inquisition. And Inquisition killed many, many Christians who did not accept the Vatican as the true Christian power. And the Vatican indeed, by burning at the stake, by beheading, by flogging, and various other means of torture, tortured the Protestants who believed in the Bible and not in the Vatican's interpretation of the Bible. So this was the sixth beast making war with the saints and making war against the Lamb. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings. And there's simply no doubt that the wars between the Protestants and the Vatican and Napoleon's eventual overthrow of the Vatican as a political and military empire is the fulfillment of this prophecy. And they that are with him are called the chosen and faithful. So if you are a true Christian opposing these beasts, then you are one of the chosen ones. If you are backing these beast systems, you are opposing your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So you better understand these prophecies, folks. If you consider yourself to be a Christian and are on the side of these beasts, of this mystery Babylon empire, you are not with your Savior. You are opposing him. Let's continue. Verse 15. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the whore sitteth are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. It explains itself, folks. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. When the judgment day comes, all these people who have been subject to the whore, the great whore of mystery Babylon, shall turn against her and burn her with fire. This has not happened yet. This will happen at the judgment day. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. What is that great city? Ladies and gentlemen, there is simply no doubt that this great city is the empire of merchants, based first in London, the Rothschild kingdom of merchants. This is the headquarters of their international banking empire. They have a subsidiary here in America, based in New York City. It's called the Federal Reserve Bank. They have subsidiary banks all throughout the world. It is through Mystery Babylon, based in London, England, which they call the city. the city within the city of London. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the headquarters, the seat of the beast, the international banking empire of the House of Rothschild. Let's cut here. In identifying the eighth beast, let us go back to verse 11 in chapter 17 of the Apocalypse. And it tells us, "And the beast that was and is not, even he is the eighth, and is of the seven, and goeth into perdition." Now we were already told that the eighth beast is going to be one of the previous to Rome, so it cannot be Rome. Just put that idea out of your mind. Whoever has taught you that has taught you falsely. It's one of the previous to Rome, and we've already identified the five previous to Rome, and we've identified the seventh as being Napoleon. So who succeeded Napoleon? Well, as it turned out, the House of Rothschild financed Wellington's army. It was not Great Britain that financed Wellington's army. It was a coalition of bankers headed by Nathan Rothschild that financed Wellington's army. And when Wellington defeated Napoleon in the year 1815, that firmly established the House of Rothschild as the eighth beast, the international banking firm of Rothschild. The very first thing that the House of Rothschild attempted to do in 1815 was to infiltrate and influence the Congress of Vienna. The Congress of Vienna was the first attempt in the history to establish an international coalition of nations. In other words, as predecessor to what we have today as the United Nations. And the House of Rothschild, seizing upon the opportunity to influence all of these delegates from the various nations, and the Congress of Vienna was called by the Emperor of Austria at that time, seizing upon this meeting of delegates from all the nations of Europe in order to try to influence them and set up their national banks in all of these other nations. They had already set up 5 national banks in Italy, Germany, France, Britain, and I forget the other nation. Let me cut there. The House of Rothschild had already set up 5 national banks in Britain, France, Germany, Austria, and Italy, because Mayor Amschel Rothschild had 5 sons, and every one of his sons was the director of one of these banks. So the House of Rothschild was already an international force during the Napoleonic Wars. In fact, the Napoleonic Wars made the Rothschilds super rich. They had already become billionaires because they were financing the armies of all of the nations of the Napoleonic Wars. Not just Wellington's army, they were financing all of the armies because all of these governments had to go into debt, borrowing money from the Rothschilds in order to finance their armies. As a result of all of this borrowing and debt by these nations, the House of Rothschild became immensely influential in all of these governments and was able to dictate terms because all of these governments owed them money. So, as has happened in World War I, the House of Rothschild also dictated the terms of the Versailles Treaty and created new nations which didn't exist before the Versailles Treaty. Because the bankers are the ones who are ruling the world. It's not governments that rule the world, it's the bankers that rule the world. If you don't understand this, you don't understand anything about the current situation in the world today. You must understand that the international bankers rule the roost. Now, in order to understand who Mystery Babylon is, the eighth beast, we really have to understand how the international banking system works. Eustace Mullins, in his book, The Secrets of the Federal Reserve, states that within the present-day city of London there exists the supreme financial district, a square mile area within which only 17 firms are allowed to operate as merchant bankers. These comprise the real magnates of international commerce and the district known as the city is their headquarters. This district is a sovereign